In this video, I would like to talk about love and cruelty, the possible association between love and cruelty. I think there are at least two ways of starting this discussion. One of them is to consider cruelty as a kind of cruelty that can arise out of love. We can say that when love is not developed in the right way, when it is not guided or protected in the right way, it can bear as one of its fruits, one of its maybe poisonous fruits, cruelty. So a kind of cruelty we can think about a kind of cruelty that can come out of love. So that's one way. So cruelty comes after. Another way of starting the discussion could be to think about cruelty attaching itself to love, associating itself with love, and then hiding itself. And the person who is experiencing or expressing love not being aware of being cruel. What they experience, what they report, what they feel is that this is just love. What I'm feeling, what I'm doing is just love. It is pure. From their perspective, it is experienced as a pure emotion of love, but that is because the cruel side of love is hiding from their perspective, from their understanding, self-understanding. So maybe I should mention, I'm talking primarily as a person who has had almost 4 decades of experience, and only secondarily as a psychologist. So feel free to join this discussion, this conversation, and don't think about anything I say as the opinions of an expert. I'm just reflecting on the few things that I have seen in other people, in my own life, in my own experiences and observations, in my own observations. So this kind of cruel love, the cruelty associated with love, we observe it maybe in parents. Some parents have this kind of cruel love. They report loving their kids, but they can exercise a lot of cruelty. We also observe it in people who fall in love and they don't feel love back from the person that they love. We observe this maybe in couples who fight a lot and they show cruelty to each other. They show kind of nastiness and hatefulness. And a comic version of it, which I think captures it very nicely in a light-hearted way, in a fun way, is a moment in the Big Bang Theory, the TV show Big Bang Theory. In one of the episodes, Dr. Sheldon Cooper, the fictional character, meets a bird. So a bird comes into his apartment, and at first he's intensely afraid of the bird, this wild creature that is now inside his living space. And after a while, with the help of his friends, he becomes more and more familiar with the bird, realizes that he doesn't have to be afraid. And the bird sits on his hand, his arm, and then he starts to love the bird. And the moment he gets used to the bird and becomes able to love the bird escapes from the apartment, escapes through the window. And this is the moment that is relevant for us. Sheldon goes to the window and looks at the bird and says this. He says, "Come back here, you stupid bird, so I can love you. Come back here, you stupid bird, so I can love you." This is a beautiful and perfect encapsulation of the kind of thing I'm discussing here, that I want to reflect on, think about, become more aware of. So what is this kind of love? I think maybe we can add to this list. I think it's a kind of love that wants or demands predictability. It says, I love you to the object of love, to the person of love. I love you, but I also demand from you to be predictable, to conform to my standards, to conform to my expectations. Maybe we can say that it's a kind of love that demands submission. I want you to submit and be, if not controllable by me, but at least predictable by me. I want to be able to absorb you within my mental model of reality. And maybe you're already thinking about this, but this is I've heard this type of attitude in how people describe God. Sometimes, not everybody, but some of the descriptions of God and God's love for humanity has been described in this way. Attached or entangled with a desire for control, for predictability, conformity, so on and so forth. I've been very fortunate in my life to have received this, the kind of love that is not attached, that is not contaminated with cruelty. A kind of love that is, that includes in it the recognition for the otherness of the person, for the strangeness, the unpredictability of the other person. And every time I feel this. I feel the kind of love that is not cruel. I feel like I am observing something impossible, something miraculous, something that cannot be explained. And I have a question here. My question is this: can you give this kind of love? Can you give non-cruel love to someone if you have not yourself received it? Is it possible? That's one question. I'm reminded of ways of thinking, frameworks, psychological frameworks like attachment theory, theory of attachment styles. And if you follow that line of thinking like that, we must begin by assuming that the non-cruel love, the love without control, is first given. It is given, and then we learn to give it to other people. The next question I have is, what does it take to give this kind of love to someone? To give a non-cruel love? How can you give a non-tyrannical love to someone? There is a video by Javier Rivera a while ago. The title of the video was Love as Indifference. And I think that is a really good, useful way of putting it. A love that is not cruel can be described as indifference, can be described as a kind of solid stance. My loving stance is firm enough that I will not react to everything that you show me. I will not react to everything, to every perception, to every observation. I will not be swayed and changed and set off course based on every single instance. So there's a kind of stability that we can, I think, usefully describe as indifference. If you love someone truly, you will be in some sense indifferent to them. Like a parent would be indifferent to what the child says, what the child does, if they break a vase, or if they break something in the house, or if they say the wrong thing, or insult someone. The parent would not be reactive. A mature parent would show some degree of stability, a lot of stability that would seem like indifference. I think it would also be useful to think about the distinction between feeling good and loving. Just because I feel good next to someone, just because we feel good when somebody is present with us, doesn't mean that we love them. That is, I think, an extremely important distinction, especially for younger people. Also, the distinction in my mind between loving and advice giving, that a genuine love shows up very rarely in the practice of giving advice to someone. Just imagine a scenario that the last time you received advice. I think a way to modify that would be this. A more loving way to give advice would be, you first ask, would you like me to give you advice? And if the person says yes, then you can offer your advice. Offering unsolicited advice or offering a way of controlling the other person, these are not loving. These are not loving ways of treating another human being. The Danish psychologist Jens Mammen introduced the concept of choice category. So what are choice categories? A choice category is something that cannot be identified, cannot be described using sensory, perceptual and even conceptual categories that are shared. A choice category is expressive of a unique bond between the person who is thinking, the person who is relating, and the thing that the person is relating to. So the home that I grew up in, my hometown. So that self-referential aspect of a choice category is important. It is not an accident. Friendship requires using choice category. So when you use choice category in treating someone, in keeping track of someone, you are setting aside all other intellectual or perceptual categories that might be reasonably applied to that person. And again, example from popular culture. In The Little Prince, our prince, the protagonist, went through at least three stages in his relationship with his rose, the recipient of his love. At first, he thought that his rose is completely unique. In the second stage, he became aware that his rose is not unique because he saw a very large garden of roses who were identical in a perceptual sense, using sense categories. They were all the same, indistinguishable from his rose. But later, at a third stage, he realized that what makes his rose unique are not those perceptual features, but his relationship, which is to say, something that could be described only with the help of a choice category. So a choice category implies that we don't have these categories of making sense of the person. We are embracing the person's mystery, the mysterious side, the unknowable aspects of the recipient of our love, which might imply a kind of helplessness. And I think this is the kind of helplessness that is a good thing. I mean, the only domain in life that I would agree with the appropriateness of helplessness would be in love, because you can become aware of this attitude, this standpoint, this position that you can have in relation to somebody else, according to which you say, I love you, but I don't understand you. I love you, but I cannot predict you. I love you, but all my conceptual categories of, being somebody who's smart, somebody who is beautiful, somebody who is practical, somebody who is who's charming or has a very cheerful disposition. All those things don't exhaust my experience of you, because my experience of you is too saturated, to borrow Jean-Luc Marion's phrase or term. It's a saturated experience, it's a saturated phenomenon. It continues to offer more than our sense categories can grasp. So how to get out of the cruelty of love would be to accept the strangeness, the unpredictability, the uncontrollability of the person that we love, the thing that we love, the thing or the person, the agent, to recognize that they are an agent, to recognize that they are different from us, and to be indifferent to them in that helpful sense that Javier Rivera describes. All right, if you have other thoughts on this is an open topic to me. I would be grateful and I would appreciate receiving your feedback on this topic. All right, that's good for now. Thank you very much for your attention, and until next time.